my name is Claudia, and today I will be talking to you about IB Psychology's ERQ. Okay, so this is our table of contents for today. What is an IB Psychology's ERQ? That's the first thing we'll be going over. And then we will also be going over some examples from past papers. I will then tell you some tips and skills required to answer these questions. And last but not least, we'll be going over these command terms, including discuss and evaluation, as well as to what extent. Okay, so what is an IB Psychology's ERQ? It's an essay that takes approximately 60 minutes to complete and is around 800 words. So what is an IB Psychology's ERQ? It takes approximately 60 minutes to complete this essay, and it is about 800 words long. You will be discussing 2 research studies or more, but keep in mind that the more research studies you include, you're going to have less time to go in depth into each of them. So I think around 2 is good enough. And then from the sociocultural approach, cognitive approach, and biological approach, you will be proposed with each of the questions, and you will be picking one out of the 3 proposed questions. However, for our HL students, take another look at your HL units because it is almost guaranteed that at least 1 or 2 of the questions will be from your HL units. Okay, and then an IB Psychology's ERQ definitely requires some critical thinking skills. And before I go into what that might look like, we'll take a look at two sample questions from before. Okay, so this is one of the set of ERQ questions from 2021. And if you look, it says, discuss how 1 or more hormones affect human behavior, evaluate 1 or more studies investigating reconstructive memory, discuss 1 or more research methods used to investigate cultural origins of behavior. So if you look at each of them, the first one is about biological approach, the second one is from cognitive approach, and the third one is sociocultural, but that does not really matter. What matters is the topic that each of these questions fall under. The first one is regarding hormones, the second one is reconstructive memory, and the third one is cultural origins. And so as long as you know 2 research studies regarding each of the topics, then you are in good standing to be able to answer these ERQ questions. Okay, let's have a look at the HL ones. Evaluate 1 or more research methods used when investigating the relationship between the brain and the behavior. Discuss schema theory in relation to cognitive processing, and to what extent does globalization influence behavior. So again, each of the topics are different, and they are likely from different approaches. So what is required to answer these questions? In the beginning, you're going to be defining the key concepts, the relevant key concepts. So it's not just, you're not just defining globalization, but the relevant key concepts that might be brought up in the context of the research studies that you want to bring into the essay. In the main body paragraph, you'll be going through the aim, the process, the results, and the relevance of bringing up the research study into the essay. So whatever research study you bring up, how is that relevant in explaining globalization? And then last but not least, you'll be evaluating the paragraph. So what's really important here is that you memorize, you're familiar and have memorized the research methods and the ethical considerations, because if you know the strengths and limitations of each of the research methods, or how you can tie ethical considerations in talking about the study, in talking about the research study, then it will be much easier for you to include that as part of the evaluation paragraph and cover multiple aspects of the research study. Okay. So let's go a little bit more in depth into the evaluation. Oh, this is the command terms, please God. Okay, so we'll be going over into the command terms. So if you recall, let's go here, and you see the first word of each of the questions, it's something do, but it says evaluate, discuss, and to what extent. And in the previous one, it said discuss, evaluate, discuss. So you see that discuss and evaluate is the most common command terms. So we have evaluate here, and with the evaluate question, you're again looking at the research method and the ethical consideration, the ethical standards, and whether the study meets those ethical standards or not. So considering all of that, what is the credibility of the study? And based off of your credibility, assessment of the credibility of the study, to what extent should we trust the findings of the study? And based off of that, what can we say about this topic about reconstructive memory or globalization as a whole? Okay. Discuss or evaluate. Similarly, we're trying to come up with consider different perspectives and pull all of that together. But at the end, we want to come to a conclusion and say this was the most salient given the strengths and limitations of the study, because this study said something, but it had the limitations were too much, and so we're going to have to dismiss this study. But however, this study said this one, but it was not. But it was very helpful, and it did not have as much limitations. We're going to consider the findings of this study higher than the other study. Okay, get the point. Okay, and then last but not least, we're going to be going over the command term of to what extent. To what extent questions, we need to be thinking about the limitations of the study and whether they hold us back from fully embracing the findings of the study. So for example, if the sampling or the demographics of the sample is limited and only done with white college students at Stanford University. Like, that was very common back in the days, and now we're trying to be more inclusive with our sampling. However, back in the day, that was very common. But can we really generalize the findings of the study that was only done with white, male, high socioeconomic status students samples? We might be able to, but there's no guarantee that we are going to be able to. And so in that case, you would say the findings are only generalizable to this kind of a population, and for us to be able to generalize it to the public as a whole, we need further studies. That's what we need. And so you would propose that in the end, and you would say, with further studies, we would be able to support the findings of the two studies that we have looked at, and be able to look at this topic, for example, reconstructive memory, more in depth. Okay, so this has been the PowerPoint on the IB Psychology's ERQ, and I hope to see you in class.